Thank you for viewing this video brought to you by PCE's National Best Practices Committee and sponsored by the Carpel Foundation. The following presentation by Yolo County District Attorney Jeff Reisig examines the role of the modern prosecutor.
This is what I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk about a multicultural community council, developing empathy with my deputy DAs and investigators and how I'm doing that, data transparency, my partnership with Measures for Justice, prosecutor-initiated resentencing and what that means, a new program and a new law actually in California that I spearheaded that involves race-blind charging, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to be surprised to hear about, and then close it out with just a real quick overview of our collaborative courts and then working on immigration issues. All of these things are, I never would have thought 26 years ago that I would be working on this kind of stuff as a prosecutor. And yet here I am. So the Multicultural Community Council is something that I started in my county over a decade ago. And it does, as Dan said, and Jean mentioned it too, building trust with the community, I've learned is just so critically important. And so when I put this council together years ago, the goal was to recruit people who are not necessarily friendly with the DA or the police. They're people that are on the other side of the picket line. And I wanted to get into a room with them on an ongoing basis. And we meet every single month and we talk about hot button issues, whether it's, racial issues, police shootings, you name it, we talk about it. And over the decade that they've been meeting with me, they've advised me on issues that have led to policy changes. It's been one of the most powerful things that I've done as a prosecutor. And a lot of the other things that I'm going to talk about today were a direct result of my relationships with these members in the community that represent multiracial, multi-religious, multi-everything across my county. And so this is just a snapshot of a few of those members. As part of that effort to engage the community, we also started a DA Citizens Academy. So every year we're out there with 30 to 40 people from the community, walking them through everything that we do in the office. I mentioned developing empathy in my prosecutors and my investigators. And again, 26 years ago, this wasn't something I ever received training on. But nowadays, I believe it's so important that our prosecutors really, they know what empathy means and to see the problems through other people's eyes. And so what we did here is we partnered with a group out of San Francisco in the Tenderloin called Glide Memorial Church. And they serve the homeless population and the seriously addicted and the seriously mentally ill in the Tenderloin, which if you've never been there, it's kind of like ground zero for the worst human tragedy in our nation. And we go there for 3 days, my attorneys do and investigators, and we embed with Glide Memorial Church and the folks there that are providing services to the homeless and the seriously addicted and ill for purposes of just seeing how they view the issue and seeing the problem firsthand. We're not in uniform, we're not carrying badges, we're dressed down, and we're just experiencing these issues through their eyes. And I'll tell you, when I first developed this in partnership actually with the police chief from the University of Oregon, and I talked about it with my deputies, they thought I was nuts. But we've been doing it now for years. We had to take a little break during COVID, but it's been a real powerful thing in developing empathy with my prosecutors and cops. Next, last couple of years ago, actually, we partnered with Measures for Justice to put up a data transparency portal. I won't spend a lot of time on this because you all know what that is, but we were the first in the country to partner with Measures for Justice to get it up there. So it's third-party hosted. All of the data is online for the public, the media, the lawmakers, whoever, and it's really thorough. It goes down nitty-gritty into racial breakouts, age, you name it, you can find it. And it's been a real powerful thing in building community trust. There are no secrets in this office, and government transparency is something that, again, years ago, I never would have thought that we would just be putting everything up for the public to see, but I think it's the right thing to do. And we've been doing it now for a few years. As part of that effort, we have ongoing town halls with my community. We have digital town halls where we take a data point from our portal and we'll message it on Facebook and media that we're going to be talking about it. And then we'll bring in people from the community and experts to dive into the issue during an hour segment and walk through it. And they've been really well attended. And this is our second year of doing that. Another thing that I mentioned I started doing is called prosecutor initiated resentencing. Not every state does this. California was the very first. The short version is there's a law now in California, and I think Washington and Oregon and a couple others, where we as DAs, as prosecutors, can look back at cases where people have been convicted and sentenced for lengthy terms and ask a judge to resentence based on extenuating circumstances. It could be a change in the law that we believe justifies a lesser penalty than that person received at the time, or extraordinary rehabilitation or other mitigating efforts. It's a pretty emerging area of the law. We've used it about 15 times in my county, which is not a lot. We file 9,000 cases a year. So it's something used very sparingly, but it's a powerful tool that prosecutors in California can use. And I think it's going to be coming your way soon, no matter where you are in the country. It's my prediction. Next. Yeah, and I have a partnership with our local law school, by the way, on that program. So it's just another opportunity, this program, for me to partner with community groups and our local law school to develop a clinic around this work. And as Dan mentioned, I mean, all these relationships that I've made as a DA engaging in these non-traditional programs have been some of the most powerful and rewarding ones, of my career so far.
Jeff, how does the law school help you? What do the students do?
Yeah, they review the cases for us and make recommendations. They do a lot of the grunt work, frankly, and getting documents from prisons and working with family members of the inmates to put together packets on reentry and support letters, et cetera. There's also a nonprofit involved in that work. It's called For the People, very well organized, professionally run group out of California. And this has all been blessed by the California legislature. Not only is there a law on the books, but they funded it for about 12 counties, part of a pilot. I'm one of them. But the law school does a lot of work for us. And then just closing it out, two other things, which I'm sure almost everyone here, is engaged in your state. We have very active mental health diversion courts. Again, deflect and divert. We're trying to get people who are mentally ill or seriously addicted out of the traditional criminal justice system and get them into treatment-based programs. This is assuming that they don't pose a risk of violence to the community. So we've been doing this for 10 years in our county. We are really, committed to this work and want to expand the programs. We just wish we had more money. And then finally, another area, I never thought I'd be spending so much time looking at immigration issues and the collateral consequences of some of the pleas and convictions that have happened years past. So we spend time now looking at those when we're asked to sometimes bring relief to people who are facing deportation for something in the scheme of things was, either fairly trivial or just not just, considering all of the factors. So that's just a quick overview of some of the programs that we've been doing here in the last again 10 years plus. And I know it's very different than what most of us probably think prosecutors would be doing, but it's worked for us.
So how would you sort of describe the current role of a prosecutor?
Yeah, it's become so much more than just a case processor, right? I mean, my predecessor served in this job for 6 terms, and I don't think he left his office, more than a handful of times to go to community events or to engage the public on anything. And my job now is mostly in the community and mostly working with all of these groups that I've talked about to make the criminal justice system more fair, more efficient, et cetera. One thing I didn't mention, I must have passed over the slide. is we started a partnership with Stanford last year and developed a race-blind charging program. This is now state law in California. The governor signed it into effect, so every DA is going to have to do it by 2025. And it basically is a software program that Stanford developed just through conversations I was having with them. I saw actually a story about a pilot they had done with another DA that didn't go anywhere. The software program is put into our case management system so that when the police reports come over, when my charging deputies are reviewing the reports, the software program redacts all of the race information, hair color, eye color, anything that would give away the race of the suspect, the victim, or the witnesses. And we make a decision about charging, a preliminary decision. It's a little more complex than that, but bottom line, we're making decisions on 90% of our cases without knowing the race of the individuals involved. And it's been very effective. It hasn't caused us to slow down at all. And it's now state law in California. That's just another example of, something that was an idea. I stole it from one of our colleagues, ran with it with Stanford. It's now state law in California. And again, I think it's going to be coming across the country, like it or not. But all of the programs, I'll just say this, I'm very much a traditional prosecutor. Even though you look at all this stuff, you might think, oh, this guy's way out there. But I'm not. I'm pro-victim. Very much a traditional law and order prosecutor who loves cops. But I also think that there's a lot of work we can do to improve the system. And that's what I'm focused on in whatever time I have left here.